good.
Oh Christ! There's always that part where we're not sure. Should we go yet? Should we?
Yeah,
Should we begin?
yeah.
You know, are you doing it? Am I doing it? What's going on?
Screw it, I'll do it.
All right, nice.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest episode of Impressions in Motion. I am one of your hosts today, Kurt, also known as Hypersonic55, yeah boy, and my co-host today. Introduce yourself, sir.
Wow, I got a knighthood. Thank you. My name's Chris. I'm the other person here in Impressions in Motion, along with Mr. 55.
Yeah. Alright, so the purpose of today's episode is to do our top 10 films of 2017. And I don't know about you, Chris, but I thought 2017 overall was a good year for film. I mean, I found it more consistent in terms of just the overall set of films that I was able to enjoy over the course of the year, as opposed to last year where there was certain dips in quality, especially towards the summer period, and then things sort of picked up again towards the end of the year.
Yes. For me, I felt like the year didn't really get started until quite late. I think the only like critically acclaimed movie I can think of that released early on in the year is Get Out. There are a couple others, but I felt the actual like really quality, decent, interesting movies didn't really get going until at least halfway through the year. But
That's fair.
you know, it happens like that way sometimes. I think most years are like that, and because a lot of the big budgeted and successful films studios release later on, I think probably that's a better window for like awards season and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been a decent year for film.
Nice. So with this top 10, I'm not sure, are we just doing the top 10 on its own, or did you want to do the honorable mentions, like, before or after, like, if you have any?
Well, let's just do the top 10s, and then afterwards we can mention any films that just missed the cut. I think if we do it like by number, so I do 10, you do 10, then I do 9, you do 9, rather than blitzing through the list.
Oh
it'd
yeah,
be
of course.
a bit more interesting. So.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, this is gonna be so different.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
That's the thing. We watch a lot of the same stuff, but we always have very different favorites.
Yes.
So yeah.
All right. I'm gonna let you go first.
All right. Here we go. Number 10. At number 10 of the best, my favorite movies of 2017, I have placed Good Time, directed by Benny and Josh Safdie. This is that Robert Pattinson film I mentioned before, but I don't think you've seen it, have you?
No, it's one of those sort of films that I was aware of its existence, but again, since I don't live in a place that has access to good multitude of films being shown, or just being a big cinema in general, I just couldn't get around to watching it. So when it is released on home video, which I don't know if it's happened yet or not, I'll give it a watch.
Yeah, it's really good. It's pretty much, I guess if I had to define it, it would be like a thriller. But basically, at the beginning, Rob Pattinson and his brother in the film, they kind of botch a heist, and then it takes place over one night, and it's just the way it's shot. There's a lot of close-ups, and it gives it a real like kind of terrific sense of immediacy. It's always moving, and it's kind of like frantic. And it just was really quite an interesting aesthetic, and it's just a great film, a really turbulent narrative, and it's just visually alluring. And yeah, Robert Pattinson as well, he gives a really good performance, and I think it's probably my favourite role from him so far. So yeah, good time. It was actually a good time.
I was hoping you'd say it. Yes. Oh gosh. Okay, so now it's time for my number 10, which was very difficult to put together, but I'd say my number 10 is Detroit.
I did actually manage to get round to that in the end.
Oh yeah. Okay. You know what? Before I get into it, quickly, what was your general?
No,
thoughts on
it was a good film. Yeah, it was really good.
Nice. For me, I was very curious about this film because there was a lot of hype surrounding it before it came out, obviously because of the status of Catherine Bigelow as a director. She's come off of two of the most talked about and well respected films that had Oscar buzz surrounding it, nominations, and I think a few wins here and there with The Hurt Locker and 0 Dark 30. I still haven't seen either of those films yet.
Either have I.
But I was like, okay, this film has an interesting story to tell because I didn't know much about these Detroit riots. I like the cast, John Boyega and Will Poulter. I was just like, oh, this looks like a cool cast. And the trailers were generally interesting, so I got around to watching it back in the summer, I think within its opening weekend, and I was really impressed with it. Most of my details about the film are a little hazy now, but suffice to say, I just found the film really engaging, intriguing, uncomfortable, and the performances from the main cast involved was really good, especially Will Poulter, who coming from that Narnia film and then Maze Runner and then into this, he's come a long way as an actor, and his performance was just so haunting, menacing, and unsettling as heck. He was one of the most horrible people I've come across in film in a while. But that just goes to his really strong performance. I really appreciated the film, and I was surprised by the amount of people that said that they didn't like this film as much as they had hoped. Maybe because it was just done in a different way than they expected, or it just wasn't on the same quality as Catherine Bigelow's war-related films of the previous years. But I did like it. I thought it was really good. It just left that sort of impact on me after I left the cinema. So I was like, yeah, man, some good shit.
Yeah, that's what you kind of want from the films based on kind of historical events like that. Since we are kind of still on the younger scale, and we're not American, so we didn't really perhaps know much about the Detroit race riots. And then to watch a film about it, I think after I watch a lot of biographical and historical films, often I'll find myself looking up about them further online, the actual events. And when a film can really interest you and grab you to do that, and to then go into your own research and look more into it, I think that's it's a successful film. So yeah, it was really well put together. It's a good time.
Yeah. All right, now back to you.
All right, at number 9, I've put a film I have mentioned before on the podcast. It's A Ghost Story, directed by David Lowery. This is that one I mentioned before with Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck, where Casey Affleck spends pretty much the whole film as a ghost, draped by pretty much a huge bedsheet.
Yeah.
But I really love this film. It's very kind of eccentric, and it's not terribly accessible. I mentioned before how the director included a lot of really static, long shots which go on for 5 minutes and more, which kind of confront the audience and really, kind of force the spectator to engage with it and to think why it's there, why am I watching this? And it definitely is not a film for everybody. It's not one of those wide-reaching movies, but it really stuck with me. And I think when a film does that, it has to be quite special. And I just really, really just love the quality and the aesthetic and the feeling and just the atmosphere of it. And I won't mention the ending. Obviously, I don't want to get into spoilers, but it just left such a big impression. It's really spine-tingling. And I love that it's its own thing. I really can't think of any other movie that I can really compare it to. So, I think it was really profound in that sense and very unique and had a great imagination. And, I really loved it.
Wow, man, you're singing that film's praises, bloody hell.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got to get on that hype.
The thing is, I watched it, and when it ended, I thought, wow, that was a good time. But I wasn't really sure where to, put it. I wasn't really sure what rating to give it. It was one of those movies you have to kind of let it sit for a while. And I returned to it again. I watched a few scenes, and I thought about it a bit more, and I watched some interviews with the director. And I thought, this is really well put together. It's a well-composed film, and the fact that I'm still thinking about it months later, as I say, it must be a special film. So that's why I liked it.
Cool. All right, now it's time for my number nine, and the placement of this film was pretty difficult, but my number nine is Okja.
Oh, you put Okja in there. Nice.
Now, I think if I'd seen this film another time, which I was planning to do, it probably would be higher on the list.
Mm.
But again, like besides a few of the films on this list, I've shuffled these things around so many times. It's difficult. But yeah, obviously after your recommendation, I decided to give this film a watch, and it was a surprise to me how much I ended up really enjoying it. The film was really, really interesting when you learn about what Okja is, the purpose of it, and the company behind how it's being created and what they plan to do with it. And the interesting thing for me was just the concept of everything that was happening in the film. It was in the realm of fiction, but had just enough realism to make it feel tangible.
Yeah.
And it was just fascinating to see how this story unfolded, how the film went in these really lighthearted and fun adventurous directions, but then goes into these really melancholy, dark and unsettling places. And by the end of it, you feel like you've been on a roller coaster of emotions. It's just like, bloody hell, man, just whew. I honestly was just thinking about it for a few days afterwards. It was just, man, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the film, but it was just really enjoyable. I really enjoyed the way in which the film was shot. The cinematography and the style of camera work, framing, and just the way in which some of the scenes were, put together, edited, and some of the tracking shots, it just felt so different to the way in which Western films were done. I thought the cast were all great. I'm not going to go back and say any of the names of the Korean actors involved because I'm not going to make a fool of myself, but the main girl was really, really good, so endearing and lovely. Jake Gyllenhaal, my god, what sort of that was such a bizarre performance.
His role is a bit strange.
And I was just like, when I saw him, I was like, oh my god, that's him, isn't it? I was like, what is he? I was so surprised.
I saw production pictures, set pictures before the film came out, and he had that eccentric kind of strange outfit on. But even that didn't prepare you for the kind of wackiness of his character. It was interesting.
I also liked Giancarlo Esposito. That guy just brings joy to my soul whenever I see him in anything. Paul Dano was damn good. Man, ever since I saw him in There Will Be Blood, I've just followed him in certain films here and there, and he never disappoints.
Yeah.
Tilda Swinton, my god, that woman just has versatility for days. I love that. She's great, and just everyone in the cast was really good, and I was just really surprised by how much I liked the film. So thank you for the recommendation.
That's alright. You should check out some more from Bong Joon-ho. He has this those tonal shifts you mentioned are kind of like a trademark of his. And all of his, well, not all of his films, but most of his films have a really great ensemble cast. And he actually collaborates with Tilda Swinton in Snowpiercer as well, which I know I keep mentioning to you. But I'm sure you'll get some interest out of that. So, yeah, good stuff. All right, so back to me.
Yeah.
Number 8 for me is Blade Runner 2049 by Denis. And I still can't pronounce his surname. Would you please do that for me?
Denis Villeneuve.
Villeneuve. Okay. Yeah, but Blade Runner 2049. This is
names.
What we chatted about on the very first episode of the podcast.
Oh, memories.
Yeah. All those years ago.
Oh yeah, man. I had less facial hair back then.
I had less as well, but my facial hair is, as you know, is quite significant.
I was gonna say it's intense, man.
Yeah. But Blade Runner. This is one of the most cinematic and kind of atmospheric films of the year. One of the films that becomes kind of, it goes beyond entertainment and it's more of an experience. And before, when we chatted about it, we mentioned the sound and the kind of presentation and how it is both kind of very large and imposing, but at the same time on a smaller scale and very intimate at moments. And, glimpses of the off-world are still glimpses, and it just has this sense of wonder in the background. It was just very, very enthralling and a very captivating film with some very striking visuals. And almost lyrical at times. So yeah, it was just a really great experience, and I love that it's a big budget, wide release film that really takes its time to kind of get going and to ponder its themes and build its ambience. And so yeah, it felt very fresh in that way, and it was a very very spectacular and awesome treat on the big screen. So I'm really glad I got to see it in the cinema.
Yeah, man. Like everything you said, good stuff. Alright, I'm gonna jump in with my number 8.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, and this is a recent entry on the list. Is The Villainess.
Oh, The Villainess! Wow, you put The Villainess up there. Damn, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, like I after I saw the film the other day, I was literally just thinking about it, and the more I was thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, I probably will watch this again pretty soon. It was just the funny thing is, I went into the film blind. I didn't watch any trailers for it. The only thing I knew about it was the review I read on IGN, and I think we briefly spoke about it at one point.
Yeah, I think I recommended it to you a couple of times.
Yeah, so I was just like, you know what? Besides the poster, that's the only thing I had, like, as a visual representation for the film. So I had an idea of what the film was going to be. But when I went into it, it was what I expected, but then so much more on top of that. And I think that's why I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
Because I expected, some sort of action, thriller, revenge kind of story. And while the film definitely opens on an action sequence that lives up to the expectations that I had for the film, it was very visceral, intense, right in your face. The film definitely just goes into a totally different direction in terms of being non-linear with its storytelling, hopping in and hopping from the past to the present, explaining what happens with this main woman, why she's on this journey, the people that surround her, and just the lies and deceit and surprises, twists and turns and revelations that happen over the course of the film. It just was surprising. I didn't expect there to be so much more of an emotional element to the film in terms of the character interaction, and there was just a sense of intimacy and drama that happened that was just, I didn't expect myself to fight. I was emotionally engaged at one point where I'm just like, oh god, like I'm starting to feel like there were points where I was like, oh no, if I get any deeper into this, man, I might cry. So I was like, no.
Damn.
But I was just surprised about the emotional depth of the film, and then how it had a nice balance between these quieter moments, getting to love all these different characters, regardless of what sort of tier of involvement that they have in the film. Everybody had their moment to shine. Even minor characters, the secondary characters who show up at one point in the story have relevance later on. And I'm just like, man, all these people left, right, and center, I love them. There's oh gosh, it's hard to talk about. But yeah, The Villainess was really fun. Yeah, fun, interesting, good stuff.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. We still want to have that chat about it sometime. I don't want to get into it here because we might go into spoiler territory, but yeah, it is a good film.
Cool.
All right, so back to me then, I guess.
Yes.
I'm depending on where you live, I'm kind of cheating with number 7. It's Silence by Martin Scorsese, which did release 2016 in America, but wasn't out in the UK until January, and I didn't see it until January. So I'm including it on my list because otherwise I'd have to kind of it'll be stuck in this sort of limbo space where it wouldn't be included. But I have to put it in there because I'm a really big fan of the novel by Shusaku Endo, and I've been following this movie for years. So it was really great to finally see it. And I actually got into the book because I heard there was going to be a film version with Andrew Garfield, and I'm a big fan of Andrew Garfield, so I thought I'd read the book before the film comes out. So to see it now, it finally feels like things have come full circle. But the film itself was just everything I kind of wanted and a bit more. It's an adaptation done right, pretty much. It captures really, all the intense conflict and the profoundness and the violence and the anguish of the novel, but adds small details here and there. And the cast were just really terrific. Obviously, you've got Liam Neeson, Adam Driver, and Andrew Garfield in the kind of central roles. But then the Japanese cast were really great as well. You got Yosuke Kobuzuka as Kichijiro, who is a very kind of important character. And I saw him ages ago in Ping Pong, in which I like to go on about in college. So it was really great to see him go from that really kind of obscure Japanese film to something from Martin Scorsese. And yeah, it was just a really, really great film. And when you're a fan of the source material for something and then they adapt it to a different medium, you kind of really want to like it. You really hope it's best. And when it is, it just feels really good. So yep, Silence is at number 7 for me.
Ah, nice. I definitely want to give that film a watch. I think the only reason I never saw it in the cinema is just because, as much as I'm not fussed about runtimes, when you're trying to organize your life around work and all that, 3 hours is a lot of time to commit towards a film.
Yeah.
And I do like, was it Liam Neeson and Andrew Garfield, and was it? I'm trying to remember. Was it Adam Driver that was in that film as well?
Yeah. Adam Driver's in there.
I thought so. So I was like, yeah, this is a good cast. I'm curious to learn about this subject matter and how they're going to depict it in the film, because I know there was a lot of talk about, was it religion, and how it was handled in this film.
Well, it is a religious film. I mean, the themes aren't for everybody, but although it's it centers on religion and faith, and the book is very much about that, and I'm not religious at all, but it's able to really capture you and kind of touch you in multiple ways, and it's very layered, and you don't have to be religious, I think, to really get the most out of it. So in that respect, it's really well composed and really well done.
Ah, okay.
But I understand what you're saying about the runtime. The reason I went to see it is because I didn't have anything else going on, but I've been waiting for it for a long time, and it's Martin Scorsese's passion project. He actually wrote the foreword for the novel. The one that's currently published. Yeah. So yeah, he's been trying to get this made for a long time. So yeah, nice. It's good to finally see it. But back to you.
Cool. All right, so my number 7 was again another toss-up, but it had to be Logan.
Ooh.
Logan for me was a film that I was absurdly hyped to see. I'm one of the few people in this world that liked the Wolverine from 2013. While not a perfect film, I feel like James Mangold and Hugh Jackman were onto something when they crafted that film. Just with a bit more refinement, and if they'd completely reworked that third act, it could have been a much better film. But I feel like tonally and some of the atmosphere and Japanese aesthetics that they brought to that film was pretty solid. But after the marketing started coming out for Logan, you knew that this was a totally different film. The trailer for Logan, I watched, I must have seen that thing about 50 times.
Yeah, the trailer is really good.
It's probably one of the best trailers I've seen for any film in recent history, just because tonally it's just everything. The music works so well with the imagery on screen. It's emotional, dramatic, and I was like, mate, I want this film so badly. So when I went to see it with my dad and my sister, I was just absurdly over the moon to watch it. And one of the things that was apparent straight from the time you saw the film was how different it was in tone. It feels like some sort of Western revenge thriller kind of thing going on in some strange post-apocalyptic world that has very loose connections to the X-Men films, but kind of acts as its own kind of thing. And while you could watch this film on its own and probably get enjoyment out of it, I feel like if you have the sort of, film baggage of knowing where this series started with, X-Men back in 2000, there is a much, what's the one I'm looking for? There's a heavier sense of drama to everything. Is that you feel like this next level journey that Logan's going on, because you know what's come beforehand. I like how dark and, violent the film was. Some of the action was really great, and I like this, adventure that Logan and Professor X go on, seeing them have to rely on each other in this very different father-son character dynamic than what we've seen in the previous films. Daphne Keane as Laura was really good, and there was just some surprising themes and story elements that I just didn't expect them to go for in a superhero-ish kind of film, which this film was just about, but it's more it's technically like a western with like superhero elements in there, much like The Dark Knight is more of a crime film with just Batman aspects in it.
Yeah.
And I thought the film was good. The only thing that's held it back for me is because, like, call me old fashioned, but there are, with certain, superhero films, there's certain aspects that were missing for me in this film. And plus, with the story, the way in which it goes with certain character directions and, just the overall plot, it was good, but just didn't resonate with me in the way in which I wanted it to. So, yeah, I mean, I guess the hype just got to me too much. But Logan is still a great film, and I think my opinion on it will change once I've had the chance to see it a second time.
Yeah, Logan's actually one of those other films I forgot to mention, which came out earlier in the year, and it was really, really interesting and great. And I'm glad you actually mentioned the kind of emotional baggage that the film has, because the X-Men films have been going for a long, long time. And not gonna lie, Logan is somewhere in my list. And I did actually write about that in my on my blog. So yes, we're on the same page there. That's interesting.
Cool. All right, what's your number 6, mate?
My number 6 is Columbus, directed by Kogo Nada, which I mentioned on one of the previous podcasts. I don't actually think I mentioned who was in it when I talked about it, which is strange. But the main the character is played by Haley Lou Richardson, who was in Edge of 17 last year. And it was just a really wonderful film, which took me by surprise. It's one of those movies I went into completely blind. I didn't really know anything about it. I hadn't watched a trailer. I'd barely read a synopsis or seen any pictures. And it just blew me away. It's kind of like a sleepier version of Lost in Translation, where Haley Lou Richardson's character, she's a young girl, kind of astray but also trapped. And then she meets this a Korean man played by John Cho, who they're both pretty much stuck in the same place in Columbus, and they kind of get to know each other through small talk. They wander the city, they observe architecture, chat about things, but they develop a more sincere dialogue, and eventually begin to fill a kind of void in each other's lives. And it was very quiet. It's very pensive. It's very a gradual film. And it was just really well built, and the ending is just kind of burned into my mind. There's this one scene in a car, which I won't go into, but I just felt that scene was so powerful, and at the same time so quiet and subdued, and it was just really a really interesting film to me.
Ah, okay, nice, cool.
Nice.
All right, so this is where things get, I guess, a little bit more generic in my side of things, but this is all about, I guess, personal enjoyment. So my number 6 is Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, hear me out. For me, the highest of highs with Spider-Man is still Spider-Man number 2. That film has still been able to do things with the character in terms of, the overall journey, the drama, and the action sequences that I still think have not yet been matched in not only Spider-Man but certain other comic book films in general, and the soundtrack as well, which still just resonates with my soul. And anytime I'm just chilling and I want to feel something epic, I just think of Danny Elfman's score from the Spider-Man films, and I feel whole. But with Spider-Man Homecoming, the interesting thing was that after I saw the film, I came out of it saying the film didn't was it necessarily blow me away, but it was just what I needed. The cool thing about Spider-Man in the previous attempts with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, they had elements of what Spider-Man was to me in the comics, and they worked well for their film adaptations, but they sort of just missed those elements together that made Spider-Man my interpretation of the character. So with Tom Holland, when they introduced him in Civil War, I was like, I'm feeling it, but what are they going to do with him in a solo film? And for me, he just gave me everything. This was a kid version of Spider-Man in school. I had to deal with the issues of growing up, becoming a superhero, finding out what it is that he can and can't do, having just a nice sense of joy and hopefulness, but naivety and determination. I love the character so much, and Tom Holland was just so delightful. I really enjoyed this film's tone. It had a before they, before the film was released, there was talk about the film having a John Hughes kind of feel to it, and I definitely feel like that was the case. Michael Giacchino's score for the film only gets better with repeat viewings, and while it's not one of the most notable scores I've heard in a superhero film, it's good. I like all the secondary cast. They all have these quirky interactions with each other and Peter. Tony Stark's involvement in the film was just enough not to shadow Spider-Man in the film, but just there to be a nice, I wouldn't even say reminder of his attachment to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but just relevant to Peter Parker's character, considering the relationship they've had since Civil War. I just had a lot of fun with the film, and since I ended up seeing it 4 times in the cinema, it ended up just getting better with me on each viewing. There's just something about this version of Spider-Man that just hit the right kind of buttons for me in this sort of joyful, hopeful, interesting kind of way. So yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming for me was just fun. I like fun.
All right, fair enough. I can see why you liked it. And knowing you, I know it's very much your kind of movie. I think we've chatted about it before, not on the podcast, so you know where I am with it. But
oh yeah,
it didn't resonate with me as much as it did with you. But fair enough, to each their own.
For sure, man. All right, what's your number 5? Getting into those higher lists now.
Yeah, top 5 now. All right, my number 5 is Logan from James Mangold.
Oh god. Oh man, I fell off a chair.
Wow. It sounded a bit more than that.
Alright, yeah, man. Holler at me, is it what makes Logan top 5 material for you, sir?
Logan was actually even higher on my list until I watched, managed to fit in another one that's just a bit above it now. But for me, just to echo what you said, it really benefits from the fact that the X-Men and Wolverine stories have been developed and told on screen to a point where it's almost excessive. So it has that emotional baggage, but it's at the same time a really new entry. It feels markedly bold and different, and it's a very new type of X-Men film. So it has that kind of benefit of being its own thing, but also being attached to the franchise, and I felt that really worked well for it. And come the end, it had such an intense emotional investment in me, at least, that it was just a very wholesome, interesting, engaging film. And while the plot itself is relatively simple, it's just carried through that that emotional weight, and through the characters it becomes something more. And all that emotion steadily kind of erupts and builds throughout the film. And it's just such a tender and kind of rousing farewell, but it's at the same time very raw and, bleak. And it just felt very new to me. It was kind of what I wanted from a comic book movie in, this kind of day and age where, many of the other ones are very, bright and filled with quips and kind of lightheartedness, this kind of companionship between the characters. But here you've got Professor X and Wolverine who kind of, at odds with each other. And yeah, it just felt very fresh in that sense, and it was just a really good time at the cinema.
No, I can definitely. The funny thing is, it's actually not funny. No. So the thing is, I do love Logan. There's several elements in the film, especially when it comes to just the tone and character moments that resonated with me in a way that I didn't think I could feel in a comic book film. Some of those more intimate moments with was it Charles and Logan, especially considering one key scene, which I think which one it is, involving Professor X and one other character before something significant happens. It was just like, bloody hell. And that ending, I was actually starting to get a little bit teary-eyed, just a little bit. Some of the words that were exchanged at that moment was just like, stop it, film. You're trying to get my emotions.
I know, when it finished, it's one of those films for me where I was like, no, that can't be the end. And then
Yeah,
then the credits come up. I was like, oh my god. But
yeah,
Hugh
man.
Jackman and Patrick Stewart are just heartbreaking in this
Oh
film.
yes, man. If they, I know that obviously this is again one of the sort of films. Even though it's not superhero-ish, it will still be categorized as a superhero film. So I don't
Yeah.
know what the chances are for Oscar contention, but I really hope that Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman are at least in the conversation for at least some awards for their work in this film because it's bloody stellar.
Yeah, well, Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart, obviously, they're really phenomenal actors, and it would be nice to see them get recognised in some capacity for Logan. So yeah.
Yay! All right, cool. My number 5 is The Big Sick.
Oh, this is that film. I think you mentioned it before, or am I dreaming it? But
Oh no, I think I did mention it before.
I've not actually seen this movie.
Oh man, like when I was thinking about all the films that left an emotional response in me after it was over, this film had to be in the list. It's described as a dramedy, but I feel like the drama outweighs the more humorous elements of the film.
Oh, by dramedy you mean drama and comedy? For some reason I thought drama and tragedy.
Oh yeah, that's just the way it's like I've heard it. The term used online.
Yeah. I think I have too. I don't know why I made that connection.
Yeah. But yeah, to try and give a premise for the film. Basically, you have this couple who find each other, get into a relationship, but then the girl gets sick and then has to go into a coma for a little while. And the film is essentially about how the guy and her parents deal with the situation, and it's just a really interesting and fascinating film when it comes to themes about relationships, like was it illnesses, how people deal with grief, and the connections that people have in these times of tragedy and stuff like that. The humor's good in the film, and there are definitely some funny moments, but it's the drama that really stands out, and the character interactions between the main characters and the main guy who has his little comedy friends. One of them happens to be Bo Burnham, and I really like that guy mainly because I followed him on YouTube before he really blew up. So just seeing him in a film, I'm like, oh my god, yeah, I remember you from your YouTube days. You've come a long way, my friend. But no, there is some genuinely surprisingly heartfelt, painful, dramatic moments that tug on your heartstrings and just make you think about life and the people that are closer to you and what one would do in that kind of situation. The acting all around was really good, and let me see, I'm trying to remember her name again. Is it Zoe Kazan? Is that how you say her name? She was the girl that was in Ruby Sparks.
Oh, okay.
She was really good in this film, and the main guy whose name I just can't think of right now, he was really good in the film as well. The performances were solid all over, so it's a film I definitely recommend. Give it a watch.
Nice. It sounds interesting. I keep hearing about it, so I'll definitely have to give it a watch.
Yay.
But I could echo many of your sentiments in that film into my number 4 place.
Ooh.
In terms of the character interactions, their kind of relationships. And at number 4, I have Lady Bird from Greta Gerwig.
I've heard so much about this film, so much hype, especially in the last few weeks.
Yeah, well, you know how much I love Saoirse Ronan. I think she's such a wonderful actress, and she really kind of brings this film to another level. And essentially, it's about kind of an oddball student played by Ronan, who she calls herself Lady Bird. And she's in a Catholic high school, but she wants kind of nothing more than to get away from that and to get out of Sacramento, where she lives. And it's much about someone who values their individuality, but has to kind of live with her mother, and they're often at odds with each other, and their kind of relationship is it's a doubtless relationship. It's strong and it's very present, but at the same time it's kind of dubious and precarious. And I just felt that it was portrayed very well. It was built very well. It resonates with you. It kind of feels very authentic, and in ways for me it was similar to 20th Century Women from last year, which also kind of explores that mother-child relationship. But I think overall I probably did enjoy 20th Century Women a bit better because Annette Bening in there is just really, really terrific. But then again, Lady Bird has the benefit of Saoirse Ronan. And her performance, although I know I'm watching a film and she's playing a character, she's just completely entrancing to me. You know, she's really enrapturing and you become lost in her performance. And I think that's a real incredible talent to do that. And the film itself is just a really, you know, it's a film after my own heart, and I would really recommend it.
Man, because after I started seeing people, put the film as their favorite film of the year, I'm like, okay, bloody hell, now it seems like this definitely a film to, give a watch. There's not just hype that, people are talking about. There's a lot of people that I pay attention to online whose opinion I value. They're talking about it, just saying, oh yeah, this is a film of the year material. So I'm just like, okay, crime in it. I guess I'm going to have to give it a watch now, aren't I?
Yeah, I think I read that at one point it was that the highest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was just some kind of like some statement someone had thrown out or if it's true or not. But yeah, it seems to have resonated with a lot of people, and for good reason. It's a really good film.
Nice. I'll definitely have to give it a watch. Criminy. All right, now this is where things start to get very complicated for me. So that was your number 4, wasn't it?
Yes.
My number 4 is Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Oh, The Last Jedi. Ooh.
Yes.
I don't think we chatted about Last Jedi.
No, we haven't. And I saw your score and I was just like, oh man, we'd have an extensive conversation about that one. But I'm going to try and keep my thoughts as brief as possible. By this point, I could have at least seen the film, I think, about 3 times. But because of the snow and some other like annoying work-related issues, I just haven't got around to seeing it again. So annoyingly, I'm still having to go off of my first viewing of the film. And when I was watching The Last Jedi, what surprised me about it was just the boldness of the risk taking involved. I knew that having Rian Johnson in the film would definitely, push Star Wars into a different direction, or a more, thought-provoking, deeper direction than what we had, with The Force Awakens and obviously the prequels. But what he did with this film was just very surprising. Some in good ways, some in I guess questionable ways would be the best way to put it. I enjoyed how intense this film felt. There was a lot of tension involved and certain levels of drama that I haven't experienced in a Star Wars film before, which was surprising but refreshing in a lot of ways. I like how they took the mythology of the series and expanded upon it, changed a few things here and there, had a few plot twists and reveals that some were expected and some were surprising, and I really enjoyed what they did with the cast. I mean, all the performances from most of the people involved were great. Mark Hamill has been my boy since the dawn of existence, so to see him in a major film and give such a dramatic performance, but then do something so much more unexpected, grumpy and filled with so much doubt and loss, and just so much changes to Luke Skywalker's character. Mark Hamill did a great job in this role. I thought Carrie Fisher was also really good in this film as well. Definitely had a more involved and dramatic role for this film as opposed to The Force Awakens. Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver were really good as Rey and Kylo Ren. You can see that these actors have definitely refined their performances from the previous film. Even though characters like Finn and Rose are I guess the odd ones out because everyone seems to hate them for their contribution to the film. I still thought that they were a good pairing. The performances were really good. I enjoyed the Casino Planet. I understand why people didn't like it, but for me it didn't leave as much of a bad taste in my mouth as some of the other people. Oscar Isaac, I still love him as Poe Dameron. He did really good work in this film, and the visual material in this film was incredible. There was just some really good stuff done with the framing, some of the some of the lightsaber sequences and the combat in general was some new and interesting things that we'd never seen in Star Wars, but also referenced some of the stuff that we've seen in the past. Especially after seeing Rogue One, they were able to incorporate what they did with the space combat and take some of those elements and then take it a little further. Now, the handling of some of the characters in this film, I do not agree with. Several characters were wasted, some felt shoehorned in, and in the grand scheme of things, when you start to think about like some of the plot elements of this film, you can really start to pick it apart. However, that being said, when I saw the film the first time, it hit me in a way that I didn't expect, but in a lot of good ways. So I'd say that it was at least about 80% of the film at the time at the time of seeing the film that just, worked for me more so than, for other people, I guess.
Yeah, it does seem like the movie, from what I've gauged online, has been very divisive, and it seems like me and you are at the kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, but at the same time, you mentioned, kind of the characters being kind of underutilized and going in very bizarre directions, some of them, which we can kind of agree with. For me, I thought visually it was a very, spectacular movie. There are some sequences in there that are really kind of, wow, this looks awesome. But the characterization and the plot, for me, it didn't really do it for me. And it had this kind of strange feeling come the end of the film where I just felt that not much had really happened. It's just like, obviously I won't get into it, but yeah, for me it just wasn't what I really wanted, and I think I prefer I think actually out of all the recent Star Wars movies, I probably prefer Rogue One, which is interesting. But yeah, I get what you're saying, and I can see why people do like it. Just for me, I wasn't really feeling it. So it'll be interesting to see the next one.
I'm glad you said you like Rogue One, though. I really like that film.
Yeah, Rogue One is just a really nice, good, standalone, well put together, well told film. And obviously that, again, it does have its flaws, and it could be a lot better, but for me as a complete film, and for characters who actually have complete arcs and don't feel like they're manufactured to an extent that they are in The Last Jedi, it just worked better. So yeah.
No, that's fair. All right, so what's your number 3?
All right, into the top 3. My number 3 is A Taxi Driver by Jang Hoon, which I have talked about before on the podcast. It's a South Korean movie, and it's about the Gwangju massacre. And I actually talked extensively about this before, so I won't really get into the whole, details of it. But it's based on a true story, and Song Kang-ho plays the principal character, and he just has to be one of the best actors working today, I think, in a world scale and in Korea. He's just so incredibly gripping, and his character is kind of at odds with himself. He struggles to kind of come to terms with all this, devastation and violence he witnesses. And throughout the film, he's kind of fluctuating between helping out and then running away. And he really displays the nuances of that tremendously. And I just felt it was such a touching and moving and well-expressed film that really kind of, gave you a terrific sense of what was happening in Korea at this time, but it was also kind of, an individual tale where these larger events are told through the eyes of this everyday character who is wonderfully written, very attentively written. And just Song Kang-ho's performance really sold it for me. And as an entire piece, the film is both a horror and a delight, really, in the subject matter and just the way it was put together. And I really loved The Taxi Driver. I think this was actually South Korea's entry to the Oscars for the best foreign film category this year. This year, I guess it would be held next year. But as usual, I don't think South Korea have actually ever won an Oscar, but they have really terrific films like this. So I'm gonna be rooting for them, but it probably won't happen.
Oh, you never know. Like, miracles do happen every once in a blue moon.
I don't know. I think it's probably already been ruled out. I think probably the shortlist has probably already been whittled down. But yeah, it's a shame. South Korea really are at the top of their game now, and there's so much great cinema and so much great talent coming out of the country. I think now is a really great time to get into, kind of cinema from East Asia.
Oh, cool, man. All right, number 3. War for the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, damn, you put that very high.
Mate, literally, when I saw this film the first time, it was my favorite film of the year, like, hands down. I came out of that film, I was like, I have been moved. But then,
I just imagine you walking out the cinema and just turning to look at a stranger and saying, "I have been moved."
that would have been weird because my sister would have been like, "What are you talking about?"
So dramatic.
No, honestly, yeah, the film literally just resonated with me in such a massive way, mainly because of the journey that, Caesar's been on since, Rise of the Planet days back in 2011. However, after I saw the film a second time with like some mates from work and some of the people, I'd heard some of the, I guess, shortcomings of the film according to certain people. I ended up looking at the film like slightly differently. Not so much that, these outside opinions really changed like my own opinion, but it was just that some of the shortcomings of the film did become a little bit more apparent to me, and certain things that I enjoyed the first time round wasn't as like, as it, oh my god, the second time round. But I still think the film is bloody good. As a film, continuing Caesar's story from where it was in the last film, he goes to some really dark places. He suffers a lot of loss, has to basically find himself, become the leader that, reestablish himself as the leader that he needs to be in order to save his kind and, protect them from these, again, crazy man humans that just want to, mess stuff up. Hate those guys, man.
Damn humans.
I thought Woody Harrelson was an effective, villain for the film. The way in which they were able to take the world from the last film and just highlight the complications of the virus and like the lack of resources in the world, and there was just a lot of interesting things that were done with the characters and story and tone. It took the story in places that I didn't expect, and there was surprising amounts of humor, which I thought was gonna piss me off, especially once Bad Ape was introduced. But he had some of the best moments in the film. Just that guy, it was just he was used just at the right moments in the film, and some of his lines were incredible, and the visual effects, good gravy. It's just insane in the space of 6 years how far is it performance capture and special effects have come. Like, I kept looking at scenes with Maurice or Caesar or some of these other, gorillas and apes, and they're just like, the detail, especially in the rain scene and stuff like that. I was honestly thinking it could be animatronics at certain points because it looked that realistic to me. I'm like, I could reach into the screen, I could touch it. It's like, it's insanity to me how good the detail is. And then you look at certain other films with CGI-based characters, and you're just like, what are you playing at? The film just did it for me, and that ending, it hurt, but it hurt in the right kind of way, and I knew it was coming, but damn, I enjoyed this film a lot. So yeah.
Nice one. I didn't put it on my list, but that's another film from this year which I did really enjoy, and I just think the whole trilogy is very strong. It was just very consistent. I think for me, I still prefer the first film, but that tends to be the way I go in trilogies. I don't know what it is, but the first film usually captures me the most. But yeah, War for the Planet Apes was really good.
Alright, man, what's your number two? Ooh.
Number two, we're nearly at the end now. Number two, alright, for me it's The Meyerowitz Stories, New and Selected, by director Noah Baumbach. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm probably butchering it, I'm sorry. But we chatted about this before in one of the previous podcasts. I think one of the most recent ones, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a film like Columbus. It kind of come out of nowhere. I had heard about it, and I heard that it was interesting. Obviously, it's a Netflix movie, so it's kind of like very accessible and easy to watch. But it just completely blew me away. And I mentioned before how I knew I was going to love it from very early on, when there's a scene 10 minutes in where Adam Sandler's character and his daughter duet on the piano, and it's just such a tender and a really kind of nuanced scene where Sandler is very moving, very loving towards his daughter, but then he has these vulnerabilities in the way he kind of glances and the camera movements kind of floating around him, the close-ups on the eyes. It's just really well composed, and it just captured those emotions and portrayed those feelings really well. And although it's a very moving film and very emotional film, it's also really funny. And Dustin Hoffman is just really such a natural actor. You know, his delivery and his timing, especially for comedy, is really great. And just the whole cast, you know, you got Elizabeth Marvel and Ben Stiller in there as well, were just really terrific. And it's probably one of the most touching movies this year, and it's a real bittersweet story, you know, about family dynamics and nurturing and legacy. And I just really loved it. It's kind of hard to put my finger on one specific aspect. It's just the whole film, just everything about it really resonated with me. So that's why it's my number 2.
Oh man, like man, the fact that you're talking it up so much, I have to give it a watch now. Like, oh, I've got so much stuff to watch. This next, I'm never gonna have I'm never gonna have proper free time ever again. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I love that. Adam Sandler really gives it a shot as well. I mean, I always believed the guy could act because from Punch Drunk Love and, you know, Reign Over Me and stuff. But he's been really getting a lot of you know, praise for this film, which I'm glad to see. And you should check it out. It's very moving.
Ah, maybe this is a resurgence. Maybe
could be.
Man, comeback story of 2018, like Adam Sandler, like, you know, he's back. Okay, so my number 2, which was my favorite film for a good while up until like I guess the autumn season started to kick in, is Baby Driver.
Oh, Baby Driver! Damn, you really did love that film. I remember we talked about that way back at the beginning of the year. Yeah, it's good that it stays strong for you then.
I had to I rewatched it the other day just to see if it still had like a place in my soul, and it does. You know, Edgar Wright as a director, he has this interesting sense of style and humor and timing with every project that he's worked on. I love Spaced. Hot Fuzz was my favorite film ever for a good while until like I think Scott Pilgrim came along, and I was just like, oh, it speaks to my like nerdy side so much. And with this film, I was excited to see what was going to happen with it, especially once the cast was assembled. But after I saw the film, it was interesting that, you know, Baby's story as this, you know, getaway driver who, you know, gets into trouble with, like, you know, a dodgy crowd and ends up having to do work for them up until a certain point. This kind of story we've seen before, but the way in which it was handled for me just had this sense of drama, realism, engagement, but nice little sense of humor and style to it. And obviously one of the main things that people have talked about the film was the soundtrack and how it was used in conjunction with the way in which the film was filmed and edited. And again, watching it the other day, like, my gosh, the way in which that was all put together, as you know, obviously we came from like doing film in college, so just looking at the meticulous detail at how, like, you know, the sound effects and music and filming of like some of those action sequences when it came to like gunshots and the driving sequences and some of the characters just doing certain physical action, I'm like, it blows my mind. It's like it's too intense, but then at the same time I'm literally just bopping my head, just enjoying the music, enjoying the timing of. There's a rhythm to the film that is almost impossible to, you know, just notice with certain other films that it's hard to describe unless you're watching it. But there's just a meticulous level of detail to the film that just gets me. And the cast were really good. Everyone from John Bernthal to Jamie Foxx, John Hamm, Ansel Elgort, at least I think that's how you say his name. It's so hard to say his name. Was it Lily James? At least I think that's her name. They were all good. They were all nice, interesting, cool little characters. And my man Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers, I like his involvement in the film as well. I just enjoy the film. It's just a lot of fun, very quirky and engaging, and it has a nice balance between the humor but more dramatic elements as well, which, watching the film the first time, I didn't expect there to have, like, you know, as much backstory and heart as it did. So I was like, yeah, this is nice. Just fills my soul with happiness.
Yeah.
All right, mate. What's your number one? I need to know.
My number one. Come on, can you not guess it?
Nah, I'm not gonna guess.
My number
I know.
one film of 2017 is Okja
I knew it would be.
from Bong
I
Joon
knew
Ho.
it,
You
but
can't say I knew it. You just said you weren't gonna guess.
no, I don't want to guess it because I want to know. I was pretty sure because I was like, okay, like is it? It has to be on the list somewhere. But I was like, as it was going up, I'm like, it's probably number one, isn't it? But nah, I'm gonna be quiet. Gonna make
Yeah.
him say it.
It was between this and the Meyerowitz stories, but Okja in the end, it just stayed with me a bit more, and the ending was it touched me on a larger kind of degree to the Meyerowitz stories. But
Yeah.
you mentioned a lot of the merits earlier on, and I really love Bong Joon Ho. I think he's such a consistent director, and Okja is just another entry into his filmography, which is just terrifically engaging and just such an interesting film. It's kind of a social commentary, kind of anti-capitalist film, which he also kind of touches upon in his other movies. Films like Snowpiercer and The Host also have social themes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, although it may share some similarity with those movies, Bong Joon Ho's films always feel very distinct, and Okja is another one. And I just thought, from beginning to end, it was terrifically engaging, and the crescendo, the whole climax, the build up to the end, was just really, really well done. And it's such a powerful end, and it hit all the appropriate beats. It's very emotional, it's very engaging, very action packed and thrilling. And the ensemble cast, An Xiao Hun is really great, and it was her first lead role, I think. And we've spoken about Tilda Swinton before. She's really engaging in her kind of dual antagonists, the evil Mirando twins. And I really love her collaboration with Bong Joon Ho. And he's a director that has a variety of kind of actor-director partnerships.
Oh yeah.
So I think he seems to me, obviously I can't speak from fact, it's just what it seems like, but he seems to have a really great rapport with his actors, and he really is able to get the best out of them. And Okja was just a terrific film for me, and the director has yet to put a foot wrong. I've enjoyed everything he's made, and Okja's no different. So that's my favourite of 2017.
Oh yeah.
I would just say as well, although it's kind of a social commentary, and it does have some heavy themes which kind of relate back to reality outside of the fictional film world, it never becomes kind of heavy-handed or overbearing. It preaches moderation and ethics, but it's kind of done in a tasteful way. I think I wrote on my blog that it's kind of a social critique disguised as an action adventure film, and just in that respect, it's really well put together.
Nice. Yeah. I can't do any better words than that, so I'm not gonna try. All right, so now it's time for my number one film on the list, and it was brought up before. My number one is Blade Runner 2049.
Oh wow, Blade Runner's your number one. Well,
yeah.
it's a deserving film.
Like we said when we did our first episode, way back in whatever month it was, so long ago. I've grown old. No, but in all seriousness though, when I saw that film, I was ready to take in this world and see what the director was going to do with it, but I didn't expect to be engaged with it as much as I was. It was a nice story with interesting characters and themes. It found a way to continue the story tone, themes, and was it mythology and elements from the original Blade Runner, but take them in a new and interesting direction, which didn't deviate from the past, but had enough variation to it to feel like a fresh and new thing. The performances from everybody involved was just stellar. now having seen Drive recently, I can see why certain people were saying that Ryan Gosling had like a similar performance.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Yeah.
He was really good in this film, and Harrison Ford. It has been noted in by certain people that Harrison Ford in recent years has only given as it is all in a certain amount of films. And I feel like this is another one of the films where he actually commits to the role and acts accordingly. He was really good in this film. The two newcomers again, was it Sylvia Hoeks and oh gosh, no, I can't remember the name of oh gosh, no, the woman that's basically Ryan Gosling's hologram girlfriend.
Yeah, what's her name? Joy. She plays the character named Joy.
Yeah, those two were a revelation to me. I didn't expect them to stand out in the film as much as they did, but they had really quality moments acting opposite these I guess Titan-based actors who are very well established in the film industry. They had some great moments, especially Sylvia Hoeks. She was really cool, and just the sense of scope and wonderful visuals, impactful film score, but then the sense of intimacy, like you said, that comes with the characters and the story elements. It just hit me in a way that I just didn't expect. And after the film was over, it was in my mind for hours. And still to this day, I still haven't seen the film a second time round, but I still feel like my opinion won't change. It's just a surprising turnaround for a first film that I didn't really get that much out of.
Yeah.
But this film was just so much more than I could have hoped, and it was a thought-provoking film that to some people was long, but didn't feel that long to me. I enjoyed the pacing of it, and the payoff at the end just felt right to me. So I was impressed and elated.
Nice one. We've both got very interesting lists, I feel, and a nice diversity in our choices as well. So yeah, man. It's always good to hear what you're into and what you've been enjoying.
Yeah, man. Now you've given me a whole lot of stuff to watch myself, so I've got to start playing 2017 catch up in 2018.
As always. Alright, should we do special mentions and then maybe what we're looking forward to in 2018 before wrapping it up?
Heck yeah. Alright, yeah. Your honourable mentions first.
Alright, well, I've got kind of two films. The first is Ingrid Goes West, which I talked about before. I really enjoyed that film. And the second is Bad Genius, which is the film from Thailand I mentioned before, which is kind of a sort of heist caper film, only instead of the bad guys robbing some casino or something, it's a bunch of students cheating on exams. It sounds very kind of odd in that way, but yeah, it plays out as a sort of commentary on the education system in East Asia, and the ending has been a bit divisive from what I've read. But it felt very natural. It progressed in very authentically, and it's just a very skillful kind of thriller. It's one of those movies that really kind of captures you from early on and is able to keep that pace and that interest throughout. And I really loved the central character Lynn. I thought she was really an engaging role, and I think it might actually be the actress's first major film role, which is interesting. I think much of the principal cast were kind of new to acting, but you wouldn't be able to tell it, and it's just really an interesting and fun, enjoyable film. And I've not seen much from Thailand, but if that's anything to go on, they certainly have a very interesting industry to check out. So what about you?
All right, well, I have a few, and this is why the list was so difficult for me to put together, because at certain points, one or more of these films were in the top 10 and were swapped out, especially out of I guess the bottom 3 at any point in time. So I'm going to list these off because there's technically about 8 of them. My gosh.
Damn. You could have made a top 20.
I could have. Okay, so the first film is Trainspotting 2. Right back at the start of this year, seeing that film, before going into it, I was, very skeptical, because obviously any sequel that comes out a number of years after the original normally is doomed to fail. But Trainspotting 2 just ended up being a surprisingly good sequel. I'm not in love with the original Trainspotting, but I do like it, and this film just felt like a great companion piece to it, where there's enough references to the past that, you know, if you're a fan of the original film, then you're definitely going to feel those nostalgic like references. But they take the character and the story in interesting directions, and this film could have been a train wreck, but it ended up just being really. I just saw what I did there, crap. The film could have been bad, but it ended up being, you know, surprisingly fun, interesting and dark, and just insightful. So yeah, I like that film. The other film that I liked in January was Split, actually. What a random, delightful experience that was, coming from, like, you know, good old Shyamalan. After how many years of disappointment, anguish, pain, and suffering at the hands of some of his films, he comes back and delivers this really interesting, fun, dark, and creepy kind of film that has like that just has an interesting ending that just surprised me in a lot of ways. It wasn't like this mind-shattering thing, but considering the significance of what that ending means for the sequel going ahead, I was just like, damn, this just changes things a little bit. And now I'm like, yo, Shyamalan, give me that good juice, mate. So I'm curious to see what he's gonna do with the sequel, Glass. James McAvoy was damn good in this film. Like, the guy's always been a versatile actor, but I really liked his performance in the film. So
yeah, I love that
cool.
scene where he's he puts on that really like kind of intense music and just starts freaking out. You know, it's just so unexpected and just unintentionally hilarious. It's really his performance was very engaging.
My number 10 for the longest time was actually Get Out, and it just missed the list by a freckle. That film I had no expectations for before it came out. I saw the trailers and I'm like, oh, this is just probably going to be some weird, I guess, horror film with maybe comedic elements in there. But there was so much going on in that film, so many layers, and so much I had to say about, like, you know, was it race and themes and just some of these other stuff that I just didn't expect. The film had layers, and I was surprised about, like, you know, some of the stuff they were able to do in this film, and like the stuff that, you know, the studio allowed like Jordan Peele to get away with. But it was just incredibly smart, violent, engaging, and funny in all the right kind of ways. And I wish I got to see it another time just to see if it would still have that same effect on me. But going off my first experience, it was really good. But there was just a few other films that I saw later on in the year that changed my opinion on that film. Next one is John Wick Chapter 2. As purely an action, you know, thriller kind of film, it just ticks so many boxes for me. The first John Wick, I only saw, I think, was it last year or something. But I liked that film. So when the sequel was coming out, I was like, oh, let's see what's going on with this one. And I ended up liking it a lot. A lot of people said that, you know, it was good, but not as good as the original. And I can definitely see that. But I like the way in which they expanded the world, the mythology of what's come before, learning a little bit more about John Wick's past, some of these new and returning characters and how they interact with him, the action sequences, which were just really well put together, on the next level hype, ridiculous, crazy, good stuff. And some of the action sequences were ridiculous, you know, in a really funny kind of way. And while that would probably take you out of the film, me and my family, when we watched it, it was just the best thing ever. Everybody was loving it. So John Wick Chapter 2 was some good stuff. Also, Wonder Woman, I had to give a mention to, because while I'm not on this stupid, like, epic hype for Wonder Woman, I still think it's a solid, like, superhero origin film. I like learning about, like, the mascara, where, like, you know, the Amazons are from, seeing Wonder Woman's journey into the real world, seeing how she interacts, seeing her, like, morals and ethics clash with, you know, the human people of that time. Having the World War I setting, seeing, you know, Steve Trevor's like little crew of people and how they all have their own interesting little backstories. Some of the action sequences were really well done, and the visuals, just the cinematography, especially in the colorful section of the film, was damn good. The only thing that prevented it from being on the list for me was that some of the villains in the film were just a little weak. The third act didn't really do it for me. And some of the action sequences, as much as I liked them, they had far too much slow-mo and some of these CGI based like action scenes that just could have been better. But yeah, still a fun, interesting film and the best of the DCEU so far, but that's not really saying much considering the quality of those films so far. The other film that was in the top 10 but just missed it was Molly's Game.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that last time. Yeah,
really interesting, insightful kind of film with great performances from Jessica Chastain and Idris Elba, and surprisingly Michael Cera in the film as well. If you've seen Michael Cera for how many years, you know that the guy is mainly known for comedic performances, but this performance was it was very different, but I really, really liked it, and I hope that people pay attention to this because it shows that, you know, Cera has like extra levels to him as an actor. He can do serious pretty well.
I think that's actually out in a few days over here. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, because there was like a early unlimited screening for like the Cineworld people, and I just happened to catch it. So yeah, I definitely recommend that one. The last two films are Gifted and Life.
Oh, you saw Gifted? I kept meaning to watch that. I didn't get around to it in the end. And Life.
Yeah, I like Life.
I
know that you didn't like it, but
I didn't hate Life. I thought it was a very standard, kind of action thriller-esque film. I'd watch anything with Jake Gyllenhaal in. I didn't hate it, but I didn't think it was spectacular either. But fair enough if you enjoyed it that much.
For Gifted, I was interested from the trailers, but also because it was Mark Webb's first film since Amazing Spider-Man 2, so I was curious to see what he's going to do with a smaller film, but also because it's my man Chris Evans. Love that dude. He's like my favorite man, and he's one of my favorite men. But I was hyped to see the film in the cinema, but it was only out here for I think about a week or two before it got dashed. So I watched the film the other day and I really liked it. There's certain elements of the plot that you could probably see coming, but I feel like the direction was pretty good and the performances definitely help you stay engaged with the plot, and the character interaction between Chris Evans and the main girl was so good. The grandmother was pretty good, and Octavia Spencer, she's just great in anything. So the performances all around were really good, and there was a nice sense of heart and emotion to some of the more dramatic scenes that happen, but there's also a nice sense of playfulness, humor, and lightheartedness in the film as well. Definitely worth a watch. I reckon it's some good stuff. And with Life, I literally saw that just the other day because it was one of the films that I was hoping to see, I think back in March when it got released, but I missed it and I was so annoyed because the concept just seemed pretty interesting. So when I saw it, I was like, this is nice. It's just, I think what engaged me about it was just the sense of dread. Tension,
that was definitely
atmosphere.
there.
It was just an unsettling film for me. And I think maybe because I was so disappointed with Alien Covenant, this was a breath of fresh air for me. It reminded me of Sunshine in a lot of ways.
I can see that, yeah.
Just with a different kind of creature on the spacecraft. And that creature, bloody Calvin, I can't think of that name anymore and not be pissed off. Calvin's a little prick. Yeah. Running around killing people and stuff. What a horrible little bastard.
I wasn't too much of a fan of the design of the alien itself, but as you mentioned, it did have this tremendous sense of dread, and every time it was coming near and it's like, there's that thing, he's coming, he's gonna munch on somebody's leg. Yeah, and it's pretty gross.
I don't know, I haven't confirmed it because I haven't looked it up yet, but I'm pretty sure the Asian guy in this film was the same guy that played one of the villains in the Wolverine from 2013.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that's him, but I haven't checked because I think he had facial hair in this film and he was clean shaved in the Wolverine, so I have to check that out to be sure. But I thought the performances from everybody involved was good. I was surprised Ryan Reynolds was in the film less than I expected.
Yeah, me too.
But Jake Gyllenhaal, that guy, just anytime I see him, he just brings happiness to life. He's a damn good performer, and I really like Rebecca Ferguson as well. Been a fan of her since Mission Impossible 5, and it was a solid film for me. And that ending, while me and my family sort of guessed it,
the
way in which it was done at the same time was it could have copped out and gone for, I guess, a bit more of a generic ending. But I was happy that they at least like went there. So I was like, yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it was. Thinking about it now, it's actually surprisingly quite violent. It's not really in your face, but just the things that happen in that film
Yeah,
are quite intense. So
I don't want to die like any of those ways.
yeah.
All right. That's my top 10. Like my mentions. Sorry, it's tired. I'm tired. Leave me alone. I think I just about have enough time to do my. You know what? No, I don't actually have any time. I'm just looking at it now. No, I don't have any time to do any. Looking forward to 2018 films, unfortunately.
Oh man, can I just blitz through the ones I'm looking forward to?
Oh yeah, drop it, man.
All right. Well, luckily I've already typed out a list, so I'll just go through them. But mostly, I really, really want to see Alita: Battle Angel, which we will have to chat about at some point. But as an enormous fan of the manga and a film I've been waiting for years, I'm really dying to see it now that it's so close. But I also want to see Duncan Jones's new film Mute, and Alex Garland's new film Annihilation, which looks really interesting from the trailer. Obviously, I want to see Del Toro's The Shape of Water, which is already out in America, but isn't out over here until February, I think.
That's so long.
That film, Thoroughbreds, looks really interesting. And obviously, there's a new film with Andrew Garfield I've got to see called Under the Silver Lake. I want to see Wildlife, which is directed by Paul Dano. And in it is Jake Gyllenhaal and Carey Mulligan, so that's a really interesting kind of collaboration there. I'm interested to see Rooney Mara's new film Vox Lux, which sounds intriguing, and that film with Elle Fanning I mentioned offhandedly before in one of the previous episodes, called How to Talk to Girls at Parties. It hasn't got a great reception so far, but it just sounds like an interesting concept, and her character looks quite fun. So also I want to see Ready Player One, The Incredibles 2, Isle of Dogs, and also a film from Jang Hoon Hwan, a South Korean film called 1987 When the Day Comes, which is another film kind of in a similar vein to A Taxi Driver. It's based on a true story about the kind of democracy movement in South Korea in the 80s. So yeah, I'm sure there's tons more, but there's only so much that are kind of known about at the beginning of the year. So I'm sure as the days progress and the weeks turn into months, more and more films will show up. And yeah, it looks interesting next year, so that'll be interesting to talk about as they come out.
Indeed. All right. I literally have to run away right now, ladies and gents. But thank you for sticking around and checking out this top 10 list with us. I hope you found it informative and interesting. And if you have any comments for us, if you want to engage with us, just holler at us in the comments section below. Or check out our blogs, which will be in the description below.
Yeah, check me out, morningroo.com, morningroo.com.
Or check me out, or not, whatever. Nah, I kid. Nah, just check out my blog, hypersonic55.wordpress.com. And I think this is the last thing we'll do in 2017. So
yeah, this obviously is recorded at the end of 2017, but I probably won't have it edited until early January. So, but
come back in 2018 and check us out. We're great.
Yeah, stick around. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.
Goodbye.